America. There's less than a week to go before Afghanistan's presidential election. But once again, what happens in Kabul doesn't stay in Kabul. The outcome of this vote has huge repercussions for the country as well as the international forces battling the Taliban and thus trying to prevent Afghanistan from becoming another failed state. In a country where nothing has proven easily lately, even getting the ballots where they're needed is a huge logistical challenge. Peter Biles reports.
For the first time in more than 30 years, these are elections being managed and run by Afghans with international support. The helicopters carrying ballot boxes, ballot papers and other voting materials are bound for the more remote areas of the country. Donkeys will be used on the last stage of the journey. Shah Mahmoud, an election worker, says there are problems reaching 6 districts, but the helicopters will make the work easier. It had been hoped there'd be some 7,000 polling stations, but the Independent Election Commission now says the total may be closer to 6,000 because of safety fears. The front-runner in these elections, President Hamid Karzai, has been to the western city of Herat to address his supporters. This week he pulled out of a TV debate with his rivals, alleging that the television company was biased against him. So 6 days to go, and with an uncertain security environment, these elections could hardly be more challenging. Peter Biles, BBC News.
While President Hamid Karzai holds a very strong lead in the polling, he could fail to get the majority that he needs for a first-round victory. And his closest competitor is the former Foreign Minister Abdullah Abdullah. Yesterday, tens of thousands of his supporters showed up in the northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif in the largest campaign rally to date. So, what would be his plans for securing the country and leading Afghanistan into the future? Those were just a few of the questions that I posed to him when he joined us earlier from Kabul. Dr. Abdullah, thanks for joining us. Tell me, how do you think that you can create a stable Afghanistan when your country hasn't even been able to stop the violence during the election campaign?
I think that's because of the failure of the current administration and current leadership in the incumbent, which has ruled Afghanistan in the past 8 years and has failed to deliver to the people. And I think with change, hopefully, which is underway as a result of the upcoming elections, a new phase will start.
Do you really think that you're in a better position, or you would be in a better position if elected, to stop the violence coming from the Taliban?
Yes, I think the main issue at the moment is the gap, the growing gap between the people and the government, and the atmosphere of mistrust. And of course, security is one problem, corruption and many other things, which complicates the matter further. It adds to that. But as a whole, I think with the new strategy, which makes the people participant in the process, whether it is security, governance, politics, development, that can create a better environment. And then with a national policy of reconciliation, which is debated nationwide and defined, and the parameters are known to the public, rather than the current one, which is a secretive process, which is led by a group of people. The public doesn't know about it, and it has been alleged that this process is successful, the current one, while the war increases in Afghanistan, insurgency increases in Afghanistan. That will be put to an end.
So you, Dr. Abdullah, would advocate talking openly to the Taliban on what terms?
Respecting the constitution of Afghanistan, and giving up armed struggle. My first target will be thousands and thousands of people who have joined the Taliban ranks because of other grievances. All those who have joined the Taliban are not among those who would like to destroy the country, take Afghanistan back to the old days. There are thousands of people who have joined them because of injustice, because of corruption, because of socioeconomic circumstances, sometimes civilian casualties and other grievances, and lack of political prospect. For those, the door will be open, and those who would like to continue the war will be isolated.
But how can you keep your country from falling apart without relying on an increasing number of American and NATO troops? And isn't that a contradiction? because the presence of those troops in your country is deeply unpopular.
The point is that the presence of the troops in Afghanistan is understood. The need for the presence is understood widely among the population. But what is not understood amongst our people, it's not acceptable for our people, that why is it that after 8 years from the engagement of the international forces in Afghanistan, we still need more troops. That's the main factor behind it, is the failures of the national government, the current leadership, which has not been able to deliver to its own people. So more troops, more money, more resources, more civilian advisors have been used as a substitute for the failures of a national government.
So are you saying that you're against
coming to an end?
Right. Are you saying that you're against the increase of troops that the Obama administration is currently planning?
No. I would say that we need more troops at the moment, but increasingly we should rely on on the strength of our own institutions, on the involvement of our own people in helping security. So increasingly we should need lesser troops, and hopefully one day Afghanistan will be able to stand on its own feet in terms of its own security and defense.
Got to leave it there. Dr. Abdullah, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
For whoever wins next week's election, the issue of how to deal with the country's rampant drug trade will keep them very busy. A new multi-million-dollar justice system has started to show some results, but a recent decision by President Hamid Karzai to pardon 5 big drug traffickers has shocked those working in counter-narcotics. It's drawn criticism from the United Nations and even from within the Afghan government. Kate Clark sent us this report from Kabul.
Becoming a counter-narcotics policeman is one of the most dangerous jobs in Afghanistan. Here at the police academy in Kabul, officers are training to combat a drugs mafia which produces 90% of the world's opium and heroin. Profits are used to buy off police, judges and other officials. These counter-narcotics police are just one aspect of an entirely separate counter-narcotics judicial system that's been built up here in Afghanistan. There are separate police, special forces, prosecutors and judges, courts and prisons. All of it in a bid to get major drug traffickers off the streets and into detention. This is just a practice drugs raid. In real life, you'd be hearing the sound of gunfire. For years, traffickers have had the upper hand, even using the Afghan state itself to smuggle drugs. The 5 traffickers who have been pardoned by President Karzai were wearing police uniforms and using a police car to shift more than 100 kilos of heroin. Their leader, Bilal, is from a powerful Mujahideen family. Convicting such a trafficker, previously thought of as untouchable, was a milestone for the new justice system. Bilal's uncle is Haji Deen Mohammed, seen here. He was the governor of Kabul until he resigned to run President Karzai's re-election campaign. Earlier this year, Fayez saw his youngest brother, Abdul Baqi, graduate as a counter-narcotics police officer, get married and be posted to Helmand province, centre of Afghanistan's billion-dollar opium industry.
It was lunchtime when the phone call came. First they said, "Your brother's wounded." Then we went to their base here and I learned he'd been killed, martyred. So soon after the wedding, it was a tremendous shock.
How did you feel when you heard on the news that President Karzai had pardoned drug traffickers?
We feel very bad about it. These people should be punished. They are the root of corruption, the root of Afghanistan's misfortune.
The pardon has drawn widespread criticism, and not just from Afghans.
We did not only have the evidence, we had as well the conviction, as confirmed by the Supreme Court, and we had a detention. So obviously, again, the president has a political role to play. It is within his legal authority. And there's nothing to say about that. But as a technician, indeed, it is a setback for what we're trying to achieve here.
Criticism of the pardon is widespread, and concern has been voiced even from within the Afghan government.
Guilty is guilty. We must stand against them, not deal with them.
In the pardon, the president writes, He was freeing the men out of respect for their family, the martyrs and mujahideen among them. Possibly Hamid Karzai felt that as president of a country with disparate and powerful political groups, the pardon was a political necessity. I hoped to ask his spokesman about this controversy, but despite repeated requests, no one has been available to speak. News of the pardons certainly came as a shock to everyone involved in the counter-narcotics effort here in Afghanistan. But what do ordinary Afghans think about it? I've come to a restaurant in Kabul, and tonight on the TV, this news of the pardon is hitting the Afghan local news headlines. Assalamu alaikum. چطور هستن؟ چی فکر میکنیم در مورد اخباری؟
People aren't happy. If the ruler does this, what hope is there for others to behave well?
Kate Clark, BBC News, Kabul.